Traditional settlements' historic experience of non-detached preservation, cases of Shirakawa village Ogimachi in Japan and Kryvorivnia village in Ukraine. The article concerns of the comparative study of traditional settlements' historic experience of non-detached preservation. Non-detached, there is understood like a way to preserve the whole settlement on its original place, with its local traditions, community system, and in the harmony with natural environment. The cases of the study are Mountain UNESCO World Heritage Shirakawa Village Ogimachi in Japan and Kryvorivnia Village in Ukraine. Shirakawa Village Ogimachi is a deep mountain traditional settlement of Japan. Up to the beginning of 20th century this area was really difficult to access. Due to this, here was formed an original architectural gashouse-style rural houses and specific social culture. By the middle of 20th century the quantity of ingenious local houses has diminished significantly. Finally, the residents started a movement to protect them. They concealed the three principles of do not sell, do not rent, and do not destroy, starting to manage their village like a living open-air museum. The thatched roofs of the local houses require the replacement every 20 to 30 years. Old community tradition called Yui allows the villagers to replace together every year the roofs of 2 to 3 historical buildings. Almost all habitants are engaged in tourism activities, holding in their gashouse-style buildings architectural and folklore museums, cafes, souvenir shops or guest houses. Kryvorivnia village is located in the deep Hutsal forestland Carpathian Mountains of Ukraine. From the middle of 19th century, Kryvorivnia became popular as a natural resort and finally get attention of the famous cultural personalities. During the times of Soviet occupation, Kryvorivnia village significantly declined. New period of its culture flourishing started in 1995 with priest Ivan Rybarik obtaining parish at local church. His revitalization efforts were supported by local community that quickly started to restore the culture of Kryvorivnia. Here you can see as at the day of baptism. Local community and the guests praying on the bank of Black Cheremosh River near erected in the water big decorated cross made of the river ice. The local Maria Nativity wooden church of 17th century is a good example of local Hutsal architecture style. In 1980 the top of the church decayed and the dome tower and the walls were covered with metal leaves as a recent cheap but harmful for the wooden structure repairing method. At late 2010, due to community efforts, local carpenters repaired the church recovering its original exterior. There is also significant museum activity that permanently has a tendency to increase. At recent 20 years Kryvorivnia also fully reobtained its historic significance as an artistic hub of Carpathians. The two cases of traditional settlement, non-detached, preservation and revitalization examined there have similar initial geographic circumstances. Both being located in the deep mountain forest regions historically hard to assess and due to this almost fully preserving their original building skills, customs, way of living and social relationship. The both are still deeply integrated to natural surroundings. Their revitalization activity is the result of local community efforts. In Kryvorivnia community, we can observe stronger religious component than in Shirakawa Ogimachi case. The religious community of Kryvorivnia consolidated around an ancient wooden church, finally becoming the driving force of local revitalization activity. At the same time, in Shirakawa Ogimachi case can be observed stronger cooperation of the local community with prefectural authorities and central government, significantly helping in old gashouse-style houses preservation. Here it is shown the difference between functional abilities of these traditional settlements. We can state that functional diversity of Kryvorivnia settlement case is richer and having longer traditions of conscious local cultural activity. The approach to traditional building skills preservation also is different. Shirakawa Ogimachi is preserving bigger amount of originally shaped ancient rural houses, while the local artisans of Shirakawa Ogimachi are concentrating their building skills mostly on the maintenance of the gas hose-style houses, leaving big reparation works to the restoration specialists. Kryvorivnia's artisans are able to repair, and even rebuild local architecture in the traditional way. The approach to touristic activity organization at Shirakawa Ogimachi and Kryvorivnia also are basically different. While Shirakawa Ogimachi community rather considering the tourists as passive spectators allowed to observe local life. In Kryvorivnia the tourists and guests felt themselves fully involved in the process of local life, including participation in religious services, festivals, preparing activity, crafts and so. The reasons of such difference are probably in the history of the both settlements. In Japanese history, rural settlements were practically closed social systems with strong local community consolidation not allowing to the strangers to enter in. While the Ukrainian Carpathian settlements historically had quite open social structure where people settled around separately in small family groups, consolidating only in the case of practical or self-defense needs. In general, it can be stated that Kryvorivnia traditional settlement is much more that Shirakawa village Ogimachi integrated in the modern world and directed rather to the future development in the harmony with their traditions and surroundings than to stagnation like an artificially limited reserve of traditional lifestyle. Conclusions. The main problem for historical settlement with traditional way of living now is to consider the appropriate proportion between local traditions, stagnation and modern life integration. The non-detached preservation of the settlement is possible now only in coexistence with surrounding nature that shape both possibility and necessity to practice continually traditional way of living, customs, building techniques, crafts, agriculture and social relationship. From the one hand, the complete stagnation of the local traditions and the way of living in the ancient status quo usually leads to the settlement life conservation or mosaification existing separately from the real world. From the other hand, the excessive openness to the world could lead to the settlement identity dissolving. The decision of desirable proportion between these two crisis points are usually made by local communities and generally reflecting deep national mentality and historical background of the settlement.